Imagine thinking a hunter is defined by the gun in their hands. Now imagine the light doesn't just power the trigger, it becomes the weapon. Why are some weapons passed down like vendettas, tied to cloaks, names, and unfinished business? But if you trace that line far enough, you'll uncover something much deeper, a hidden creed, a weapon worshipped like a relic, one that defines every true hunter main. In this video, I'll walk through the hand cannons, bows, snipers, and armor that shape the hunter mentality. I'll dig into the exotic pairings that echo old stories and reveal at the end the one weapon gifted by the traveler that still shapes the soul of every hunter to this day. And I promise, it's not what you think it is. Let's start with the simple question. What is the one weapon uniquely coded as hunter? Not a gimmick, not a sandbox meta pick, something woven into the DNA of their legends. Shin Malfur had the last word, an 80 RPM precision hand cannon that fired a solar round strong enough to cauterize the corruption of Thorn. He didn't find that gun in a loot chest, he inherited it from Jarn Ward, who took him under his cloak after Dredgen Yor killed his entire family. The weapon was more than just a sidearm. It was a blood oath. The lore says, yours will be a shot fired not from your hand, but from your heart. That's how the gun cult starts, with the idea that your weapon is your identity. But there's a dark mirror to this legacy. Dredgen Yor, once calling himself Rezel Zir, carried the corrupted Thorn until it carried him beyond redemption in most people's eyes. Yor was used as a cautionary tale by the Vanguard secret police, but in fact, he can be perceived as a hunter who defied traditional Vanguard teachings and pushed the line to prepare for the coming darkness through whatever means possible. His Thorn was a kinetic 150 RPM hand cannon that siphoned life force. Every kill, every victory was a corruption he chose to embrace. If you want to understand why hunters are obsessed with proving they're better than the Dredgens, start here. The line between legend and damnation was always a hair's breadth. If you love these kind of deep dives into topics so specific to Destiny, I'd really appreciate a sub or a like to help support the channel and keep me producing these videos. Now, back to one of the legendary snipers to ever call themselves Hunter. We can fast forward to that rascal, Andal Brask, the Hunter Vanguard before Cade 6. His rivalry with Taniks, the Scarred, wasn't settled with supers or grenades. It was settled by the sound of bullets in an empty hull. Andal didn't leave behind a famous gun, but the records show he wielded a unique sniper that was never brought into game and remains an untold mystery. His real legacy wasn't his loadout, it was the culture he embodied. Hunters don't need orders, they need a target, and they need the freedom to hunt it. That mentality carried over to Cade 6, who treated his Ace of Spades like a diary and a vendetta in one. Ace is a 140 RPM kinetic hand cannon with Firefly. Precision kills caused solar explosions that feel like a sunslinger's personality coded into ammunition. Even after Uldren Sov killed Cade, the weapon didn't lose its purpose. It became an artifact of vengeance, gifted to the Guardian who avenged him. The inscription reads, "To the man who pulled the last ace from under my sleeve." The sheer mechanics scream Hunter. When you pop a gunslinger super with the exotic Celestial Nighthawk, you get a single massive golden gunshot. Basically the same philosophy as Ace, one shot that ends the fight. The Hunter ideology is that you're inheriting Cade's creed. Precision is identity. You just need to look at Lucky Pants and their synergy with hand cannons to see that the class is molded for precision with power. Almost like Bungie is telling you, that's the eternal Hunter meta, and you need to play into it. It's impossible to talk about the Hunter's gun cult without talking about the suppliers, Tex Mechanica. They built the weapons that became the Hunter's myth, hand cannons and slug shotguns that felt more like old world heirlooms than modern golden age weapons. Last Word and the First Curse were Tex Mechanica experiments in what a hand cannon could mean. They weren't designed for the tower, they were built for the unexplored frontier, for guardians who needed their weapons to be as personal as a blade. Chaperone, another Tex Mechanica masterpiece, is a slug shotgun that rewards precision kills with Roadborne, a stacking damage buff. Our lost Amanda Holliday's mother used it to defend settlements from fallen. Even its name is a philosophy. Your gun isn't just a weapon, it's a comparison. Every Tex Mechanica gun has the same DNA. High handling, quick draw, clean iron sights. Weapons that felt handcrafted for the hunters who would carry them. Not because they were optimal, but because they were personal. Every hunter main, consciously or not, is living out that inheritance. A belief that the right gun can outlive your light. Even the cloaks are part of that contract. In some hidden reports, there are records of hunters passing down their cloaks and weapons together, creating what Ikora once called tides of memory. When Shin Malfour laid Dredgen Yor to rest, he kept Yor's thorn in his vault, so no other guardian would mistake it for an ordinary weapon. If you want proof this gun cult isn't just legend, look at Crucible. Statistics show hunters still overwhelmingly favour hand cannons and scout rifles over other primaries, not because of TTK spreadsheets, but because the shape of those weapons feels familiar. They're designed for precision, autonomy, and the psychological warfare of one-shot perfection. That's why Dead Man's Tale, an aggressive frame 120 RPM kinetic scout, has become a modern hunter icon with a hip fire shot addiction. With cranial spike stacks, every hit feels closer to inevitable. The lore calls it the feeling you never shake. This feeling is a shared commitment to the unspoken reason hunters love bows. The Monarch, Wishender, Tiku's divination, the idea that a single draw can end an engagement before it starts appeals to the same mentality that made Thorn a cautionary tale and Ace of Spades a legend. Every shot is a premeditated statement. I see you. You're already dead. Nightstalker Cloak from the Taken King's Collector's Edition. Live and die by the draw of a bow. The first Hunter Vanguard herself was a dedicated bow fanatic. Tallulah Fairwind's legendary combat bow, Tyranny of Heaven, is still available as a drop from the Last Wish raid, and was her heirloom to pass down to the next Hunter Vanguard, Caliban 8, after she lost her life by losing a game of cards to a Wish Dragon. Throwing the bow to Caliban, she let her last words be, "A dare's a dare, man. Good luck." But these are only pretenders to the throne and not the true partner to every hunter. The truth is closer than you could ever imagine. You can be forgiven for thinking I'm making the case for hand cannons to be the ultimate gun that all hunters worship and develop identities around, but you'd be wrong. Let me explain. Imagine you, like so many people of the last city, spent time sitting and watching hunters in the Crucible. You'd think their legend was written in the reticles of hand cannons, the long gleam of sniper scopes, or the soft hum of bowstrings pulled taut. And you'd be partially right. These weapons have always defined the hunter's presence. Precision, autonomy, one lethal shot fired without hesitation. But all that noise, all that ritual around the gun cult only tells half the story. Because the truth is, every hunter belongs to another secret tradition. One of the oldest, closer to the bone, and so personal it never really needed an exotic ornament to make it sacred. I'm talking about the cult of the blade, the first knife of the hunter. The weapon hunters didn't find in a loot chest, didn't forge in a foundry, one that was more like an inheritance from the traveler itself, an evolution, not a creation. You can trace its legacy to the first hunters, the first risen. In the earliest legends, hunters were the ones who slipped between the battle lines to deliver a message in steel. The knife was never a backup plan. It was a defining gesture, a statement that no matter how much light you commanded, you still believed the final word should be delivered by hand. Caliban 8, the gunslinger who wielded knives, the way warlocks wield Nova bombs, proved this point. In the lore tab for Caliban's hand exotic, it says, The knife is an extension of the self. The self is an extension of the light. When Caliban charged into a burning battle with the Hive, he didn't throw grenades or fire a rocket. He walked straight into the throng, left a solar knife in the knight's chest and ignited it with his will alone. Even the exotic armor that revolve around blades reinforce this idea. Ophidius' spade doesn't just grant you a second throwing knife. The lore calls it a gift from the great serpent, so your hands never go empty. This is an armor piece that turns a knife into an infinite promise. You will always have one more to throw, one more opportunity to remind your enemy how personal this fight really is. It's worth remembering that the first hunters didn't have the luxury of high rate of fire hand cannons or pinpoint scout rifles. In the Dark Age, most Risen used whatever they could scavenge, but a blade could always be relied upon. It didn't run out of ammo, it didn't jam in the cold, you carried it, and it carried your conviction. That's why even now, centuries later, the Hunter Super isn't a massive beam of light or barrage of rockets. It's a single golden gunshot or a blade dance. The ultimate expression of focus, delivered, up close. In the Reef Wars, Petrovenge reported that the most feared hunter strike teams weren't the ones carrying the biggest guns. They were the ones who vanished from radar, slipped behind catch crews, and reappeared only when their blades were already out. A well-placed knife isn't just a tactic, it was a psychological operation, a declaration that you'd already lost before you knew you were being hunted. From the blade dancer's cloak, these blades, they're an extension of your arm, your reflexes, your light. Think about the way every subclass channels its power through the blade, through the hand. Gunslingers wield knives of pure solar fire, each one a burning fragment of the Traveler's light. Arc striders shape their entire discipline around the flow, the dance of current along a staff that started originally as a combat knife in hand. Night Stalkers draw a void bow, but what are the tethers if not arrows honed to a blade's edge? Even Revenants, when they freeze a battlefield, finish the moment with blades of stasis crystal. The knife is the through line, the oldest proof that hunters always trusted their hands more than their sights. You need only look at the throwing knife, as it may deal less damage to the body than a Titan's Storm Fist and a Warlock's Energy Drain, but as far as I know, the throwing knife is the only melee ability capable of achieving critical damage. In these cases, it is the highest damaging melee ability. It also has a massive aim assist, making headshots deceptively easy. Always aim high, and the aim assist will forgive slight mistakes. Throwing knife might take some practice to land properly, especially at medium to long range because it has an arc to its flying path, but you can see the synergetic connection to the true heart of a hunter. You can look at all the statistics of Crucible wins and Grandmaster clears, and you'll see hand cannons at the top of the list. But no spreadsheet can measure what happens when a hunter main lines up that perfect throwing knife kill across the map. The physics engine calls it precision damage. The lore calls it destiny, because in that instant it doesn't matter what gun you were carrying, it matters that you trusted the smallest weapon to do the biggest work. That's why no matter how many new exotics Bungie releases, no matter what sandbox balance tries to tell you is optimal, the knife will always be the hunter's most honest weapon. It's the one you never have to reload. It's the one that proves you don't need overwhelming firepower when you have an unbreakable resolve. This isn't a backup, it's a signature. The knife is the oldest prayer hunters ever learned. One the Traveler answered with every subclass. One we will still remember every time we raise it, draw back, and let go. So the next time you're loading into a match and debating what loadout to run, remember the truth. The guns define your range. The knife defines your legend. And that's the secret cult every hunter main still belongs to. Worshipping the simplest weapon ever made and believing it can always end the story.
Wow, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm such a lucky boy. I can't wait to go home